what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me at the podcast recording studio table is Chris Fry. Chris, you are the co-founder and co-director of the Foot Candle Film Society, and also the co-director of the Foot Candle Film Festival, which I'm very happy to say I'm sharing that co-title with you. So how are you doing?
I am doing well. Interested to hear your thoughts on today's movie.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'd seen it, and I remember I'd seen it, and then it is nominated for an Academy Award, and so that kind of got a little bit more attention to things. Mm-hmm. And then we decided to review it, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, we will get into that in just a moment. The film Chris is teasing you about is the film Society of the Snow, which is a telling of the story of the rugby team that crashed in the Andes back in the 1970s. For people who say, well, that sounds familiar. Yes, there was a movie made called Alive that was made of that story back, I think, in the late 90s, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Well, yeah.
But this is a new version, a new telling of that story by writer and director J.A. Bayona. So we'll be discussing that film and giving a full review of that film in just a moment. That is a Netflix, it's Netflix original, right? I mean, that's like they're releasing on Netflix only.
Yes.
Okay. So it's available on Netflix now. We'll be reviewing in just a moment. Plus, and I'm super excited for this, Chris. I know we capped off 2023 over the last couple weeks and gave our recaps of what we thought about the year. But now we're turning all our attention to the year that we just started. Gosh, it's already February. So we're already deep in the year.
Yeah.
But we're still going to do this. We're going to hear Chris Fry's most anticipated films of 2024. Your top 10.
Yes.
Since we're already a month into the year, you've actually already seen one of your own top 10 anticipated
right. Yeah, because
films.
it came out in January. So
right.
yeah.
So you'll get a quick little recap on how that experience was. But I can't wait to hear the other 9 and see if any of your lists are making my list, or if I've got some arguments to make with you on your list. We'll see when we get to it. That'll be fun. But let's get right into our movie review. Again, it is the story of the rugby team crashing onto a glacier in the Andes and their story of survival. This is the film Society of the Snow.
Mírame los ojos. Mírame los ojos.
El avión no se ve.
Y aunque pasen por encima nuestro, no van a ver.
¿Qué pasa cuando el mundo te abandona? Cuando no tenés ropa, te estás congelando.
¡No vamos a llegar hasta arriba!
Cuando no...
Director J.A. Bayona first came to the movie-making world's attention in 2007 with his horror film, The Orphanage. Bayona follows up on his most recent film, being 2018's Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom, with Society of the Snow. The film, as Alan alluded to, tells the true story of a Uruguayan rugby team whose plane crashes on a glacier in the Andes and follows their struggle to survive. As you also alluded to, this is the second time this story has been told on the big screen. The 1993 version, called Alive, starred Ethan Hawke and was in English. Society of the Snow is in Spanish and is one of the films nominated for Best International Feature Film for the 2024 Academy Awards. Alan, what did you think of Society of the Snow?
So I don't know what verb to use, because I feel like saying I love this movie is kind of, it's not appropriate for the subject matter of the film. Okay. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it, because it's a tortuous watch. It's a very, very difficult film.
Sure.
I'm very much in admiration of this film. How's that? That's the word I'm going to use. Because I do think this film is extremely good. If you're going to tell this story, and I'm disregarding what happened in 1993 with the film version because I looked through my film log over the years, Chris. I do not believe I've ever actually seen that film. It's one of those where I heard enough about it and I heard people talking about it, and it kind of was all buzzy about people talking about that film, when it came out. I don't think I ever saw it, so I have no basis for comparison. But if you have to tell this story, and you do have to tell this story, this is a story worth telling. This is the way to tell it. I felt this was expertly done, harrowing in places where it needed to be harrowing, and inspiring in places it needed to be inspiring. It's a tough film to kind of grab onto the characters for me a little bit, because the characters, when you see them covered in snow and huddled in blankets, they all look the same, and it's difficult to kind of grab onto one individual character over another. But I think the film does the best job it can in giving you some things to hang on to with those characters and to grab onto them and follow the stories appropriately. I have a lot to say about this film, but I really am quite in awe of it, and found it to be very rewarding and an exciting yet harrowing watch. So, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you and tell me what you think.
So I had seen the 1993 version. I remember going to see it in the theater. I was in college. A bunch of friends went to go see it, and we kind of knew, you see the trailer and you're like, oh, it's a plane crash based on a true story, and it had Ethan Hawke. So it was like, yep, we're in. I remember liking it, and now having seen this film, it's weird because I kind of feel guilty for liking it.
For liking
Alive, the original version.
the older English version.
The older English version, because you see this, and granted, like at the time, we're in a very different world now in 2024 than we were in 1993. We still take other people's stories and make them all English and use American actors. We still do that. So I'm not saying we don't do that anymore, but like, I can see how now J.A. Bayona, he's a known director, and he's like, and I can see totally, like when I first heard about this story, I was like, oh yeah, this is the Alive thing. I wonder why they're remaking it. But then you start to watch it and you're like, well, duh, I know why they're making this, because it's kind of their story to begin with.
Yeah,
and
it got appropriated.
It did.
And that makes me leery to even want to go back and see the 93 version for that reason.
I think it was okay. It was good. I liked it. I liked Ethan Hawke's performance. I thought it was, you can't believe some of the things that happened, but still, just because it felt, now looking back, it feels so removed from it that I don't think you need to.
Okay.
There's no reason for you to.
Got it.
Because I don't think there's nothing about that version that I don't think this version did just as well, or obviously improved on it.
Okay.
And just the fact, I mentioned when I went to go see that, it was like, oh yeah, Ethan Hawke's in this. We'll get to some of the performances and call some names out and stuff. But yeah, of course, I'm not familiar with anyone in this film. There were no familiar faces.
For American audiences, this should be a fairly, a lot of unknown actors performing these roles, which I think helps. I think is good.
And I think it is good. And it is, like you kind of said, it was kind of tough, because then you can't, there are so many, because it's a plane full of people.
I mean, there's about 30 to 40 people on this plane when it starts.
And it's a plane full of people, and you're trying, and they fall, and you're trying to keep track. Okay, who's saying what? Who's the guy that kind of starts out as maybe your narrator or leader? It's a little confusing. But then if you think about it in the terms of the story, it probably should be that way.
Yes.
Because it's like, it's very chaotic. This has happened. These people are trying to figure out how to survive.
Yeah.
It's not a very clean narrative, so to say. So the fact that it's a huge ensemble piece from the very beginning is kind of a good thing. And you alluded to, it is, I don't remember the first one being, it was still harrowing and it was very, upsetting and stuff, but I don't remember it being this intense. I think I remember the plane crash being intense, but then the things that happen after that, I don't feel like were as intense and grueling. Like the fact there's some times in this where they get kind of snowed in the plane,
avalanche,
and so and things like, and just some other things that, basically the thing that I remember from the other Alive, and I think people would say they remember having to eat some of the survivors after they passed away and using that as a food source to be able to survive. Otherwise, there's no way they would have been able to survive. Yes, that's the thing that kind of was the people would talk about back then. Like, oh, have you seen that movie where the plane crashed and they had to eat some of the survivors?
Unfortunately, that became the whole thing.
Yeah, that
everybody
really grisly detail.
knew about the
and
film.
it's handled as delicately as they could in 93, but something about the way it's done this way, and actually at the conclusion of the film, some of the things that are done in that, it's like, I don't know, it's just, not to say the 93 didn't handle it well, but this kind of handled it and didn't not that they sensationalized it in 93, but
Well,
I don't know, it handled it as well as I think you possibly could. if that
I'm
makes
not,
sense.
and again, I can't compare it
Sure,
to the
sure.
93.
I
I'm
think
not
it's
going
good
to
you
try.
can.
I just say, I obviously knew that element of the story going into just being aware of the story from a broad sense before watching this film. I thought the way they handled that subject matter, that decision, that choice that had to be made, that even the way once a decision was made, how they went about going through it was so well done and defined for the characters in this film. I just was really amazed. I'm like, this is how I wanted to see if I ever had to experience this type of thing. This is how I'd want to see it on screen.
And I think
it did
that
so well.
the details that they went into about how they came upon that, and then once they made that decision, how they handled it.
Yeah.
I think some of those details, maybe they had them in the 93, I don't remember, but the way they were presented here, I felt like was so much more.
I got it.
so
That's the
much
thing
better.
is that I understood every character's belief system. I understood their willingness or unwillingness and why and what they were going through and trying to deal with it. I just bought all of it. I totally felt like this film does such a wonderful job of putting you in the mindset of where these guys are in their decision process, and not just on the food source, but on everything. I mean, there's choices being made about, do we venture out in this area to try to find something? And if we do, what's going to happen if we do? And it's like, there's consequences with everything, and there's decisions being made. And the film just does a wonderful job of helping you see the choices they're having to deal with and understanding the choices they're having to deal with and how it's affecting them, the decisions they're making. And I will sing to the praise, sing on high about the praise of this film, and that it does something with the narrative. And I know it's been a while since you saw it, so maybe, I don't know how much you recall, but with the narrative of the film and the use of a narrator, and I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. There are some choices made on who we're following as a narrator and for how long that I thought were really well done. And there is a pivot point where the narrative shifts in its objectivity of the story, and it actually made it for me more impactful. It actually made that last section of the film more impactful because of the change in narration or the change in the style of narration. And it just worked.
And
So,
I think, yes, I envy you. I envy you for not having seen the original, because it actually caused a little bit of confusion for me, because I kind of knew. I mean, we know they're survivors. That's something, you know.
right. You do know that.
So,
right.
So, and that caused a little bit of confusion for me, because I was thinking in my head, I already knew how certain things were going to play out, and they did play out that way. But just, it was a little confusing.
It's
for me,
helpful
but
to know.
That's
yeah.
my fault, not
Well,
the film's fault.
All I knew going into it is I knew there were some survivors.
Sure.
I did not know how many.
Right.
I didn't know if
okay.
it was 2
Okay.
or if it was 20. I had no
Okay.
idea. So that helps with the story a little bit. And I didn't know the circumstances in which they survived.
Right. And
I don't know.
See, and that's,
you know.
yeah. And I think I will say, I can't remember the gentleman's name. You can find it online, but one of the survivors did act as a reference for the first film, for the 93 Alive. He acted as a reference again on this film. So it's like they did, talk to the survivors or the group like both times. So there were, they did have help both times, but I think I guess maybe the care that this film took, it's an extra half hour long. The other Alive is 2 hours. This is 2.5 hours. And man, like, I felt it. I think I guess just the way the first film, to me, upon my recollection, seemed a lot more like polished. Not polished, but just kind of given that Hollywood sheen of like
It's
an
taking
adventure.
off all the details and the edges that you don't really have to have, and just getting you straight to the plot points and the beats.
And it still makes you
Yeah.
appreciate what these people went through, but maybe it's not perceived as being as harrowing or as grueling. Not that
Yeah.
it's difficult to put into
Well,
words.
this film had it's really two scenes that I felt like were just some of the most intense, scariest things I've seen in a long time. One is the plane crash itself.
Sure.
I mean, it is every bit as traumatic as it honestly needs to be to put you in the mindset of where these people are. Because what just as harrowing is the crash itself, it's the aftermath of the crash. It's
Sure.
the immediacy afterwards that actually was probably even scarier to see. Then, as you mentioned, there's scene involving avalanche, and I'm not going to go into much more detail on that, but just, yes, that was another thing that the way they staged it, and it kind of comes out of nowhere and it hits you as the viewer, just like it does the members of the crew there. Boy, it's a tough watch. I mean, look, I had to watch this thing by myself. My wife was interested in coming to see it. I said, after I'd already gotten it started, I'm like, nope, I don't think this is going to work for you. It's a tough watch. It's
Sure.
a very, very tough watch. Plus, she has a plane flight coming up in a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? You don't need to see this right now. So,
Sure.
I tell you what, too, from a visual standpoint, I mean, obviously, the 95% of the film takes place in the Andes Mountains,
Yeah.
and very stark but yet beautiful landscape. And that's what I thought they balanced so well too. Is that I found myself looking at the scenery and just thinking how beautiful it is, but yet they also Bayona also just makes the landscape a villain, at times. I mean,
Sure.
there are points where you're wanting, just as a viewer, just like they're wanting to see what's beyond a ridge or what's over here. And when you see it, you have your same sometimes stomach drop or heart drop, just like they do, I'm sure at times, just to understand how perilous the situation is. So it's I just thought this was a masterful directed film. Performance wise, I don't really, there's not really a call out performance, I want to say. I mean, I think this is a true ensemble where everybody's performing a really, really top notch game. We do follow one character, maybe a little bit more than others. We get a little more backstory for him and a little bit, and he is kind of our narrator for the film. And that is the character, the real person's name is Numa Turcati, and he's played by Enzo Gronerick. I'm going to go with that. And again, I'm not giving it as a call out to say he's better than everybody else. I think everybody here is very, very good.
Sure.
And just a very, they knew what they were signing up for as an actor, and they delivered. And I thought the ensemble was great. So, but Numa as kind of our protagonist, our person to follow, I think carried the film extremely well and brought us on board the way he needed to. So, yeah.
I'll say the events that take place towards the end of the film where you kind of find out, how things wrapped up. I think that was one area too that, at least in my recollection, that part kind of grounded it a little more as opposed to just, okay, we have survivors. Yay, the movie's over. It kind of showed the survivors trying to integrate back into society,
Yeah.
and we'll just kind of leave it. But the way those, and maybe that's the last 20 minutes that wasn't in the other film, that this is a half hour longer or whatever. Like that's what really kind of helped to ground this
It did.
film, make it seem, real important.
I appreciated it. I thought it was really good. And I don't believe that this film ended with the traditional depiction of a real event motif of having the lines coming up explaining like what all the characters are doing now or
Right.
whatever. It didn't have any of that, which I also appreciated too. I think the coda of the film, that last 15 minutes or so you're talking about, did what I needed to do. It gave me what I needed for these characters. But the use of photographs was something
Real photographs,
that,
yeah.
comparing the real photographs to photographs we saw taken throughout the film, that worked for me. It's like, that was enough. I didn't need to see, don't tell me what each character is now doing in their life or how long they lived or whatever. The photographs worked and became that connection point to the real story in the film we just saw. So, yeah, I could talk about this film for a good while. I did find it extremely interesting to watch. And but again, I will say as a warning for anybody listening, I mean, it is a very difficult watch. If you saw the 93 version alive, I'm going to go ahead and guess this was more intense and more harrowing than that. Just my guess. Because I know that was a Hollywood-driven film with bankable movie stars, and they typically aren't going to go quite as in depth. This one's a tough watch, but very, very tough. But found it extremely rewarding.
When I think I'll say, kind of echoing what you're saying it's a rewarding watch, it's a tough watch, but it's worth seeing. And I'll second that, and I'll say, if you're wondering, like I was when I heard this movie, I've seen Alive, I know the story. Do I need to see? And the answer is, as I've kind of already mentioned, yeah. I think this is the superior version. Not the other version's terrible, but I think it's told by the people who should be telling the story.
Yes.
So I'm glad that I saw it, and I would recommend that people who saw Alive, if you're interested in the story, you should check this out as well. It's worth it.
J.A. Bayona, I just want to mention, I have not seen The Impossible. I have not seen The Orphanage. Actually, I'm not really familiar with his other films, unfortunately, other than the Jurassic Park movie, which we did review, and I was not a fan of.
Okay. Well, let me. Okay. So The Orphanage, I will also highly recommend. It is a horror film. It's very unusual. I think somebody who kind of helped shepherd him along with that film was Guillermo del Toro. I think he kind of helped because he at that point had some success, and he's like, hey, here's another upcoming guy that I'm going to support and kind of put the word out there. You need to see this film. Like The Orphanage a lot. Impossible, it was really interesting because it's based, you and I were talking before we went on air, based on an event, a tsunami event that did happen. But the actual story that's told in there of a couple with a kid who gets split up and how they struggle to try to find each other, that was kind of fabricated.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Or was it not?
Let me just give you a note because we're fact checking this in real time.
There we go.
And Chris is referring to the film The Impossible from 2012, directed by J.A. Bayona. It also depicts a disaster, and that is a tsunami.
Right.
So it actually, my apologies. I told Chris beforehand it was not based on a true story. It actually is based on the experience of a true person and her family.
Okay.
So a true family that, are kind of relayed their experience during this tsunami. And that was what was made in the movie. So there we go. So J.A. Bayona has done 2 disaster related true stories and showing kind of the human spirit of, getting through these trials and tribulations. So that was what The Impossible did. And now he's done that with the Society of the Snow. But you're saying the movie itself, your impression of the film?
It was okay. Yeah. I would say it's okay. The thing that was troubling, and granted, when I watched it, the internet had already voiced their opinions. The big brouhaha with that film was that the couple is Ewan McGregor, Naomi Watts, and I don't remember who the child was.
It's actually Mr. Tom Holland.
Oh, wow.
Tom Holland was the boy.
Okay, so that was before he was Spider-Man, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 2 people, and a lot of people's concern or kind of what they complained about the film was, did the tsunami take place?
The tsunami took place in, just said the Indian Ocean.
Okay, so basically, instead of following people and what happened to people of that region, they follow a white
Thailand.
Thailand. Okay, so instead of following all these Thailand, people in Thailand, people native to the country, and what happened to them, they follow this affluent white couple, and they're playing. And you're like, okay, and it's terrible to whoever was there, but the fact that they are the focus, a lot of people really came down on the film.
I could see that,
but so. I will say that I think it showed, though, that Bayona could do a scope of a huge event like that. And with Society of the Snow, you can see how his skills that he's developed as a filmmaker, how they came to play. And I think, this is obviously, from what Alan and I've said, Society of the Snow is a much better film.
Yeah. I know this was technically a 2023 release.
Sure.
Came out very late 2023 on Netflix, I believe.
Or
Or did it not come out till
It
January?
may have come like early January. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I'm not sure.
But it technically got at least some theatrical release in 2023 to be able to be considered for awards, correct?
right. I think they have to.
And this is what was what country submission was this? Was this Spain's
or it may be.
or Uruguay's?
Yeah. Good question. I mean, because the filming locations were in Chile in the Andes Mountains. So I don't know
Right.
if it could be. Yes, I don't know whose
Okay.
actual entry it is.
All right.
But it's
Either way,
it definitely is an
yeah.
entry. Okay, and I looked and saw that especially January 4th was the release date in the U.S.
Okay.
on like Netflix. So
All right. So then the film is right. The film is nominated for Best Foreign Language Picture, one of the 5 nominees for this year's Academy Awards, correct?
yes,
All right. I know I'm saying this without having seen all the other entries, but this is absolutely my favorite right now.
okay, fair enough.
We will certainly see if that's the way it ends up. And it's, if I had seen this in 2023, this probably would have been somewhere bouncing around in my top 5, 6, 7 films. As it is now, since it technically is released in the United States in January, we are considering this a 2024 film. So right now, it's my favorite film of 2024.
Well, there you go.
But good, I only have maybe 3 to work with on that scope.
Fair
so
enough.
we'll see. That is Society of the Snow. Anything else, Chris, we need to mention there?
No, I think it's a strong contender for the award at the Academy Awards. We'll have to wait and see. But
Okay, the film is representing Spain.
it is Spain.
Yeah, Spain
Okay.
this is their
Production
their
award.
production for the Academy Awards, and it is one of the films nominated for International Feature Film and Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Also got a nomination.
Okay, so we
for
got
that as
2
well.
nominations. Okay.
Yep. So we will certainly see on March 10th how this film fares in both of those categories. So, all right, Society of the Snow. It is available on Netflix right now. It is Netflix exclusive here in the United States. So that is where you can see it. We're both recommending it strongly, but it is a tough watch. I always like to throw that in there. Not that we're trying to be parental with it all, but just, I think it's important to know that it's a tough subject matter. It's a very, very difficult story, but I feel like expertly told. So, okay. Chris, let's take a quick little break, and we come back. I want to hear your most anticipated films of 2024. This is going to be fun. I love countdowns. I love numbers. I love lists. Chris has got one to share, so we're going to go through his list here in just a moment. So stay tuned. You're listening to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv. We'll be right back in just a moment.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Hello and welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. Chris and I had our review of Society of the Snow earlier, both high recommendations for that film, well-made film, available on Netflix. But Chris, as I said, that was technically a 2024 release, came out on Netflix or in the United States at the very first week of January.
Right.
So it is one of the first releases of the year. But, we talked about our 2023 best of year a couple episodes ago. We recapped the year. Every year, we always look forward to see what are some films coming out this coming year that we're looking forward to. And I may have some of my own kind of penciled in somewhere, but you have actually created a list. And I want to hear your list of the 10, your most anticipated films of 2024. But do you need to set up some rules for us,
of
or
course.
ground rules on things?
Always
first?
have
I mean,
ground rules
to make sure we
Okay.
know.
So just like with the lists that you and I have already done for years in, where we were doing films, this list is also it's in alphabetical order.
So not ranked by importance or
or like which one's released first or whatever. No, it's just
an alphabetical
with the
listing
A,
of
yeah.
10 films.
right.
Okay.
So and these, assuming release dates stick, these
Yes.
all will come out in 2024. Some have in Letterboxd, they have 2023 dates, but I'm assuming that means they were doing festival circuits, and then they'll actually
still
be
come
released
out
in
this year.
2024.
Now,
So,
just
in theory,
I guess to put the disclaimer out, some of these films may not make it in 2024.
That's true.
So,
They may not.
You may be revisiting them for your 2025 list if they don't make it out yet. So.
right. And then a guiding principle for the list as well is there are no sequels, no remakes, and no cinematic universes. So there's going to be no Marvel cinematic stuff. There's no Dune 2. There's no, none of that.
No Deadpool 3?
No Deadpool 3. So it's
Because that actually violated two of the rules.
right.
It was cinematic universe and a sequel.
And a sequel, right.
Yeah.
So none of that stuff can be here. So that kind of forces me to kind of, really scavenge what's supposed to come out and really try to find some unique titles. So, and I will go ahead and say, because I made this list December 31st, I have already seen one of the films on this list.
So one of the 10 films you're going to be listing
Yeah.
is something you've already seen now, but you had it on your list as of December 31st for your anticipated films of 2024.
What I should do, yes, and what I should do probably at the end of the year is see how many of these films succumb to I had too high expectations, and that hurt my opinion of the
I
film.
think we need to do a little research project, Chris, on each of your anticipated films every year, and then correlate it against your best films list at the end of the year.
Because I think it does doom
Find
some
out what
films.
percentage of films actually do make it, and if it wasn't for your level of anticipation built up, could they have fared
Could
better?
they have done?
I don't know.
Possibly.
All right. Well,
So I'll go.
theory be damned. We're going to go forward with it
Yeah.
anyway and still hear your anticipated films for 2024.
Excellent. So the first one that I'll start off with is called The American Society of Magical Negroes.
Yes.
It's being directed by Kobe Libby, and I'll give you kind of the plot description as what it's given in Letterboxd. Aaron is an idealistic young black man who's recruited by veteran agent Roger into the American Society of Magical Negroes. Aaron finds that working for the society, an ancient, secret, and magical organization dedicated to making white people's lives easier, is the most challenging and unexpected journey of his life.
Wow.
It stars Justice Smith as Aaron, and David Alan Grier is also starring in the film. So just the premise of that, I'm completely unfamiliar with the director. I think this is his directorial debut, so that kind of adds interest right there. But I'll admit, how I came up with this title, I was in the theaters around the holidays seeing films just like everybody else, and I saw the poster for this, and I was like, do what? and just the title, you're kind of like, okay. And so then I started doing some research. I'm like, okay, it goes on the list because it's a very unique premise.
Well, playing on that cinematic trope that so many movies have fallen into in the past and gotten properly criticized for,
Yes.
is the quote magical Negroes idea of someone that you need as a supporting character to just kind of magically show up in a film or have some sort of profound impact on the lead actor or actress.
You can think of things
So-
like Field of Dreams
Right.
or Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
or,
there's a lot of those examples. And yes, it is a very overused and unfairly used premise for
Sure.
a film. So they're obviously wanting to make some commentary on that for sure with this film. And I think that's great. I'm excited to see it as well.
So that was the first one.
right.
Next up, we have The Bike Riders, which have we done a trailer
We
topic
did.
on that film?
'Cause
Okay.
that was supposed to come out this year.
Okay.
It's supposed to in 2023.
23.
It actually, because of the strike, it got delayed.
Okay.
The film was done. It was
done.
set for release, and they pushed it back to June.
So I'll just kind of give a recap on what this film's about. It is directed by Jeff Nichols, and it stars Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy, and Michael Shannon. Kathy, a strong-willed member of the Vandals, which is the bicycle game, who's married to a wild, reckless bike rider named Benny, recounts the Vandals' evolution over the course of a decade, beginning as a local club of outsiders united by good times, rumbling bikes, and respect for their strong leader Johnny. As life in the Vandals gets more dangerous and the club threatens to become a more sinister gang, Kathy, Benny, and Johnny are forced to make choices about their allegiances and loyalty to the club and to each other. So, and it's based on a book of photography, I think maybe that was taken of like basically like a Hells Angels type club, I guess the Vandals of that. But and then somebody wrote kind of this screenplay kind of around the idea of like documenting what happened. So that's my understanding at least. Jeff Nichols, always a big fan of his. And the cast looks impressive. So, yes, you could say it just looks like kind of like a Easy Rider type redo type in a way, but I don't know. Or something like, I guess I never watched the show, but like a Sons of Anarchy riff or something. So, cause that dealt with like motorcycle gangs and stuff, but, I don't know. I'm interested.
No, I think I actually brought this up as a film I was very curious about and anxious to see. So glad to see it still made your list. That is awesome.
Okay, so and hopefully it will come out. It didn't come out in 2023. Hopefully it will.
Well,
come out
it
in 2024.
should be a pretty lock for this year. I mean, I think the idea is it was done. I mean, it's a movie that was ready to be released. It was just because of the strikes that were going on, they just couldn't promote it. And they have a lot of star power behind the film, so they wanted to get it out there. So, yeah.
So next up is The Book of Clarence. This was a 2023, but it came out in 2024. James Samuels, the director. The cast, Lakeith Stanfield, Omar Sy, David Oyelowo. The story, I'll give you, is a streetwise, down-on-his-luck Clarence, that's Lakeith Stanfield, is struggling to find a better life for his family while fighting to free himself of debt. Captivated by the power and glory of the rising Messiah and his apostles, he risks everything to carve his own path to a divine life and ultimately discovers the redemptive power of belief may be his only way out. So yes, this is a biblical epic. It takes place back in that time. I was thinking when I put this on my list, I have now seen it, so that it was going to be kind of like a Life of Brian take, you know, the Monty Python film Life of Brian, done obviously a while ago because it was a Monty Python film. It is a really interesting film, and I think I'm glad I saw it.
Okay.
I think it is one that suffered definitely from my expectations because James Samuel also made a film that I believe was a Netflix original that was The Harder They Fall, that was like a Western. And I liked that one and I thought it was good. And then he took on this crazy premise of what I just described. And I was like, okay. And then I saw the names involved. I was like, okay, this is going to be amazing. And it was good. And I think it should be praised because it is a biblical epic that for the most part has an all black cast. So just, I can imagine that it might be kind of cool for people who have never seen depictions of the Bible with that type of cast. That could be a very, edifying thing to see there. I see somebody that looks like me up on the screen doing something back in biblical times. Okay, so applaud it for that. But something about, and I think this all related, the acting was fine it was great across the board. Camera work looked great. Direction was good. But the script, for me, struggled between being a little too comedic and then the tone shifting into something that's pretty serious as far as some stuff going on. So, and I don't know, maybe I need to see it again and just realize, like, now that I know what it is and know how things kind of shuffle out, be more okay with it. I don't know, but I'm glad this film exists. I would be curious if you ever caught up with it, what your thoughts were on it. So not overall successful for me, but I am glad that I saw it. So that's The Book of Clarence.
Fair
and
enough.
I don't know if it is still in theaters. It was in theaters, but I think it's probably made it.
Yeah, I think it's already out.
So maybe something people can just catch up with when it hits a streaming service.
Sure.
But that's The Book of Clarence.
Okay.
So definitely a filmmaker, Harder They Fall with this film. I'm still interested to see what he's going to do next because hopefully, I don't think this film make a lot of money. So hopefully he'll still get a chance to continue making films because I think he's talented and obviously has the imagination. So that's The Book of Clarence.
Okay.
Working down the alphabet. I believe the next film I'm going to mention, we have also mentioned, but I'm not sure, you'll have to tell me, is Civil War by Alex Garland. I think we did a trailer for this
Yes,
as well.
we have talked about this as well. We showed the trailer and discussed it a bit. Yeah.
So it's another one of those with a big cast. It's got Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, which I don't know from here on out, since Power of the Dog, are they always going to be sold as a package, even though they may not be like husband and wife or whatever, like in the same film. It just seems like now that Power of the Dog happened, which I believe that was the first time they were on screen together in the same film.
As far as I can recall.
And it's like now, like, I feel like another film recently has also had them in it as well. So it's just interesting. But Alex Garland, huge fan of his. And it's kind of the near future dystopian film where the U.S. stands on the brink of a civil war. I'm interested to see it. A problem with it could be that it could be a struggle to watch in 2024, seeing as how we are in an election year, and that tends to make things very on
I
edge
think it's going to be a
politically for
very
everybody.
interesting release of this film in April when it comes out. So, yeah.
But still, it
No,
makes my
I'm
list.
super excited for this film. I brought it up, I remember, with our trailers, because I was really curious, the tone of the film. I couldn't tell if this was Alex Garland trying to make something a more actions and more broad appeal film, tapping into our society's wants at this point, or if there was going to be something more to it than what we kind of saw on the surface. And I'm kind of hoping for something more, but I still trust that it's going to be an interesting film regardless. So,
Agreed.
yeah.
We'll have to, and it's going to be, you said April, so it's approaching. We don't have to
It
wait
is
all the way till
approaching.
summer or Prestige Picture Time in November. So
Yeah.
we'll find out the answer pretty soon, hopefully. So
Okay.
next up, we have Drive Away Dolls, which is a new film by Ethan Coen. And this is another
Yeah.
film where he and Joel are not working together. It is just Ethan. To me, it seems like kind of a return instead of going the Macbeth route.
Now, did Ethan or Joel do Macbeth?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It may have been Joel, but still, like instead of doing something that does not fall into something I would think the Coen brothers would do,
Yeah.
rather working independently or together, this looks like something that is a Coen brothers film. Like I get it. It's Jamie, an uninhibited free spirit, bemoaning yet another breakup with a girlfriend, and her demure friend Marion desperately needs to loosen up. In search of a fresh start, the two embark on an impromptu road trip to Tallahassee, where things go awry because they cross paths with a group of inept criminals along the way. So you have the whole, like, two happy-go-lucky people run into criminals, and things start happening. They chase them. You have kind of from the trailer at least, the stereotypical kind of Coen brothers dark humor type. It looks like a lighter Blood Simple because you have that whole crime thing, but it still has some like jokes, kind of like a Raising Arizona feel to it. And you've got Margaret Qualley, you've got Beanie Feldstein, Coleman Domingo, Pedro Pascal, Matt Damon. So, and I think some of Pedro Pascal and Matt Damon are more like cameo role type things, but still kind of an interesting buddy film. So I'll be interested.
Well, so Joel was the director of the Tragedy of Macbeth.
Okay, so he did
So
Macbeth.
he went that, and Ethan is now, this is his first solo film.
thing.
And
Got you.
yeah, he definitely seems to be adopting more of the traditional Coen Brothers style film, but who knows?
Yeah.
It could be a little different too than what we're expecting. So I remember seeing a trailer for this several months ago, kind
Yes.
of out of nowhere. I knew nothing about it
Me neither.
and was kind of shocked when I saw it was an Ethan Coen film. And
Right.
anyway,
And then it seems like the delay from when they showed the trailer to when this film's released, I don't know if it also suffered a little bit from writer's strike delay or
I
who
don't
knows.
know. Yeah, I'm not
But,
sure, but that is coming out in when?
I don't know. It's there again. It's listed as 2024.
Looks like it's going to be, hold on, I'll be able to tell you right here. February.
Oh, okay.
February 23rd is the date for Drive Away Dolls.
And as far as I know, too, I forgot to mention, these films, with the exception of one, are theatrical releases, I think.
Is that another rule you've
No,
laid
no,
on
no,
top
no,
of
no,
this?
that
Or just,
wasn't a rule.
it just so
No.
happened
No,
that all
yeah.
10 of them were.
Well, yeah, with the exception of, I think, two that I know are going to be. Anyways, who knows how, but I like Drive Away Dolls, maybe it's just going to go straight to Netflix. I don't know, but I think it's theatrical. We'll have to see.
Okay.
Okay, so next I have Evil Does Not Exist. This is from Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and he's the person who did Drive My Car, which was Oscar nominated a couple of years ago. So this is a new film by him. It has a 2023 release date, so I think it has played festivals. So, but the summary of the film is Takumi and his daughter Hana live in Mitsubiki Village close to Tokyo. One day, the village inhabitants become aware of a plan to build a camping site near Tokayumi's house, offering city residents a comfortable escape to nature. And I think things, from what I've heard, I haven't even seen a trailer for the film, it's kind of like it's a corporation kind of making a campsite. So it's kind of like what happens to their neighborhood. It's like a corporatized version of nature. It's like, I don't know, there's some interesting things going on there. But I just, sheerly based because it's the guy who did Drive My Car. Was a very long film, but I remember really liking it. This is actually only 106 minutes, so it's a little bit more concise.
Like half the length of Driving the Car.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was just curious to see something else from that filmmaker. So that's Evil Does Not Exist. Have no idea when it's going to be released or how. But it was, Festival Circuit 2023. So I think at some point it will come out in 2024.
Okay. All right.
So for the general audiences. Okay. So continuing on, we have Hitman by Richard Linklater, filmmaker we have talked about here on the show many times. But this film is the theory behind, or the synopsis behind it, is a cop working undercover as the most in-demand hitman in Houston breaks protocol in order to help a desperate woman escape her abusive boyfriend. Now, in general, would not be interested in that description. But the fact Richard Linklater is doing it, I'm curious. And then Glenn Powell, who is somebody who was in Top Gun. He was in a romantic comedy that came out around the holidays, which Anyone But You, I think was the name of that one. And I did not see it.
Oh, right.
But Hitman, I'm curious. Because Richard Linklater, I'm always curious to see what he does. He's an interesting filmmaker. But with this one, I don't know. I'm curious. It came out, or it's been doing festival circuit in 2023. So some early people have seen it already. And I believe it is a Netflix release, possibly. I think I did hear that this one was going to be Netflix, maybe.
Yeah,
now, will it
have
have a
that
theatrical
handy.
run beforehand? I don't know.
Right. I don't have that handy, but it's probably a pretty good guess. Netflix release. I mean, I'm just going to say it's a Netflix release for any film and just assume that I got a 50-50 chance of being right. So
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's Hitman. June 7th is the date.
Okay,
for
June
that.
7th. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, Mickey 17. This one did have a release date of 2024 when I put it on the list, and unfortunately now, poof, that release date has disappeared.
Yeah, they've taken it off the release schedule altogether.
See, that's frightening. It was directed by Bong Joon-ho, and the plot synopsis with this one: Mickey 17 is an expendable, a disposable employee on a human expedition sent to colonize the ice world of Niflheim. After one iteration dies, a new body is regenerated with most of its memories intact. So then it's like wondering, what are you doing to me? Kind of in a way similar to Moon by Duncan Jones that you and I talked about long time ago in the show's history. But this one stars Robert Pattinson, I believe, as Mickey 17. Mark Ruffalo, Toni Collette are in it as well. Stephen Yeun. Interesting cast. I love sci-fi. I'm a big fan of Bong Joon-ho. His prior film, Parasite, was my top film of that year. But I am worried that this has been bumped. So
It has been. So, yes, well, that'll be an interesting thing to see what happens with this film.
Yeah.
Or when it's going to come out or how.
yeah,
or
hopefully
what.
it's just a matter of maybe distribution. I don't know. And hopefully it's not because there have been problems with it. But
I don't know.
yeah, I'm sad.
Mickey
about that.
17.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Waiting to hear on that one.
Yes. Next up is another 2024 film we have discussed on the show. It is being released on Netflix, so we can confirm all those things. It is Spaceman, which was the Adam Sandler film that we've talked about the trailer as well. So since we talked about it really recently, I won't do the whole plot description, but it is sci-fi. Adam Sandler's in it. He is the astronaut, the spaceman of the title. So curious when he does things that are outside of his normal, just when he does something that's not comedies, because his comedies can be very hit or miss, especially when they're done for Netflix. But when he does things like, what's the Paul Thomas Anderson Punch Drunk Love? When he does that, or, things like he did with the Safdie brothers, I'm like, okay, he still makes interesting choices. Yeah. So the fact that he's doing a sci-fi film, the cast looks interesting. The trailer, still interesting. So we'll see. That is Spaceman.
Yeah, that one's on my list for sure. So I think we've talked about it a good bit and very, very curious about that one. Yeah, great.
So the 10th film on my list is Trap. Plot is unknown at this time, but it is described as a psychological thriller set at a concert. The people that are associated with the film: Josh Hartnett, Haley Mills of the Parent Trap fame, and this will give you a clue as to the director, Shalika Shyamalan, and the director is M. Night Shyamalan. So,
Okay.
always
Writer, director,
M. Night
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan.
Josh Hartnett, Haley Mills.
Yeah.
Okay.
So always interested to see, especially when it is not something he's doing like The Last Airbender, where he's just a director for hire, when he is taking on original material that he wrote. I'm always willing to give him a shot. You know, he did Old, was not, thought it had elements that were good, but then kind of fell apart for me.
Yeah.
But still, he's somebody that I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt. We know very little about this, but a psychological thriller set at a concert. Okay, that sounds like it'd be. And I think, although you and I differ, like I really liked Split. That was something that he did semi-recently that I really liked. And then Glass had potential, but then kind of, fell. But those were all both at the time when you saw Split, you didn't know it until the very end, kind of a follow-up or a thread on Unbreakable.
Yeah.
So I liked Split, Glass, diminishing return there. But still, I admire for him for trying to come up with original things and working how he wants to. So with Trap, hopefully this is not an extension of that trilogy with the heroes things that he was doing. I wouldn't think it is because it doesn't involve Bruce Willis, doesn't have Samuel
I think
Jackson.
after the response of Glass, I think he had always said that was kind of meant to be kind of
trilogy.
a trilogy of films he
Right.
could put together. So I don't think we're going to revisit that world. That would be my guess.
Sure. I think
I could be surprised, but to me, sounds like a lot more like, like Old. Old was a one-off film that was kind of him exploring a story idea he had. I hope it's more like The Visitor because I did like The Visit with the
Visit with the
quite a bit.
grandparents film. Yeah,
I like that.
horror film. Yeah.
That to me was like good Shyamalan. It's
Yeah.
like self-contained, singular story. It knows what it wants to do with the story, and it's just going to have fun with it, and that worked for me. So
And here's something else, we've talked about, and I think all of his films, yes, they've always had for the most part, have had like a twist element or like an ending where he does the thing. Cause that was, The Sixth Sense is kind of how he
Sure.
got that started. But this film, if he could just make a psychological thriller set at a concert and just worry about making it a psychological thriller and not worry about maybe a twist ending, I think could actually be really good. Now if he does it, great. But like if he could just say, you know what, I'm going to set that aside and just make a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be interesting.
no, I'm always willing to give him a shot. I mean, he lost all my faith after The Happening many years ago, but he worked to build it back. Well, after The Happening, there was like several films of just no interest at all. After Earth, Last Airbender, some of those just did not work at all.
Sure.
But he started to kind of get back into his groove. And I'm not saying the films have been great, but they've been okay. And a little more hit or miss, but
Sure.
But at least I admire the effort being put in.
I do too. And it'd be one thing if he was just, making movies for Marvel or making movies for DC and we felt like these were just diminishing returns. But when you're trying to come up with original material and you're not always succeeding, it's like, well, but at least you're trying to.
Well, we forgot about Knock at the Door. That was actually his
Knock
last
at the
film.
Cabin.
Oh,
Yeah,
Knock at the
Knock
Cabin.
at the
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But
Knock at the Door.
that was based on a book and he adapted
that's
it.
true. That's
So,
true. Very true.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people really liked that film, and I was not as high on it.
I was mixed on it. I liked elements of it, but didn't work as a whole. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He did make my top 10 list of films for 2024.
Fair enough. That's good.
And this
That's
is
good.
early days yet because we don't even have a poster for this one. But in theory,
Yeah, I was going to say, I looked it up and there's nothing about it. So other than just saying it's a film and 2024 is the year, and I saw the couple stars and that was
but
about
see,
it.
in a way, especially with a Night Shyamalan film where a lot possibly depends on twists or surprises, I would rather it just kind of come out and not see a trailer.
And don't
for
tell
it.
us what I don't even want to know what the thing of it is. The whole premise even. Old, that was the thing, is that you kind of got the whole premise like way on early. Everybody knew what it was. And then it just kind of was setting itself up for a little failure, I think, by the end.
Sure.
I'm all fine with it if it's just going to be a true, hey, It's a film called Trap. It stars these people. It's coming out this date. That's all you need to know, and just go. And I'd be down with that. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
So that is your 10.
Yes,
that is
that's
your
my
10. Again, all original films, meaning they're not based on, they're not remakes of other films, or they're not sequels to existing films, or part of any kind of cinematic universe.
Correct.
So obviously there are a lot of films you did not include in there because of those parameters, but 10 original story ideas as films that you are interested in.
Yes.
I'm with you on most all of them. I think all of them at least have some level of interest with me as well.
Sure.
So we will certainly see. We're going to need to track these at the end of the year and just see how we did.
What films that I didn't mention that maybe are sequels, or what are some highly anticipated films that you, Alan, have?
Well, I think the only one that I can honestly say I'm like looking forward to that falls outside of that round. Honestly, I've looked at the whole release schedule for 2024, and I think the more interesting films that you've been listing are the ones I'm more anticipated for. There's not anything in a sequel franchise film that I can look at and say I'm excited or interested in that film. The only one that meets that criteria, and it's also it is a trap being set for me because this film could be no good.
Okay,
is the Beetlejuice sequel. That's it. Yeah. That is the only film I can look at this year and say, okay, it could be really good. I've got high hopes for it. Of course, I love the original. I want Tim Burton to return to form. I want to see a really good Tim Burton movie again. But I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just, it's got the trappings of, it could go either direction.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
think
what makes me nervous.
That one definitely would have made my list if I didn't have my rule, just simply because I like to think if somebody has waited this long, it's resistance, because I think people, because Beetlejuice was successful. Everybody involved with it was very successful. I would have thought he would have been pushed to do it before now. And the fact that it's been so delayed gives me hope that no, you know what? Maybe the script is absolutely amazing. And, Michael Keaton still doing great work. Mm-hmm. He single-handedly made me like the Flash movie from last year, which apparently nobody else did. Mm-hmm. So he achieved that pretty much on his own. Despite the fact I knew he was in the film, despite the fact it was ruined by the trailer, he still single-handedly saved that film for me. So yeah, if I didn't have my rules, that would have definitely made my list. I have tracked down my films from 2023, so I'm going to run through them real quick. This was my...
All right, go for it.
These are, let's see, these are not in alphabetical order, but I'll just list them anyway. Asteroid City, Beau is Afraid, Barbie, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Next Goal Wins, Renfield, 65, and The Last Voyage of the Demeter. So you can see in those films, because we reviewed most of those on the show, I think the ones that really let me down probably Beau is Afraid, Renfield, and 65.
Yeah.
And Last Voyage of the Demeter. Those are, but things that were successful for me, obviously Oppenheimer, Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
So
they were a little split on the list there.
Yeah. So so I'd say it wasn't 100% lived up to the expectations. Some did suffer. Beau is Afraid is probably the most vicious person that I suffer from. That was the Ari Aster film that Joaquin Phoenix. But so that was my list from 2023. You did. But you and I both didn't like Last Voyage of the Demeter, right?
I didn't hate it, but it could have been so much better.
And you never saw Renfield?
I never saw Renfield.
Okay, don't bother. And fortunately, you've never seen 65 either, with Adam Driver.
Yeah, I never saw 65, which that was one I actually brought up on the show as being kind of interested in when it was first teased and trailer. And then as soon as I heard some negative things about it, I'm like, okay, no, I'm good. Never mind.
Not good, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, so you're batting about 50% on your list
from
2023. We'll see if that holds up for 2024 or not. But thank you for sharing with us your list. Very happy to hear those. I've added a couple to my watch list that I was not aware of or thinking about as much. And we will see what else happens with the rest of the year. All right. Well, if anybody, that wraps up our show for today. If anybody has any thoughts on any of the 10 films that Chris mentioned or any others that we're maybe forgetting about coming up in 2024 that we should be keeping watch on, please let us know. You can contact us and let us know. Or if you got thoughts on Society of the Snow that you want to share as well. Chris, how can they get a part of the conversation with us?
Sure. You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Twitter @FootCandleFilm. We're on Facebook, Foot Candle Film Society. Instagram and Threads, we're on there as Foot Candle Film. Alan and I are on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing, sometimes leave quick takes, reviews. Do us a favor. Give us a star rating, write a review, share with your friends on whatever service you receive your favorite podcasts on, because it could help us reach new listeners, and we would appreciate that.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We will look forward to talking to everybody next time as we review another new film and have some other movie-related discussions. So this has been Foot Candle Films. Thanks for listening.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.